Today's case happened in the United States. Rolf Tiede, age 51, and Kaye Tiede, 49, were married and had a holiday cabin in Oakley, Utah. The couple had 2 daughters, Linae and Trisha Tiede, 20 and 16 years old, respectively. The family used to spend their vacations in this cabin. In summer and winter, they would retreat there. They found the place very relaxing because around the cabin you could hear only the sounds of waterfalls and birds, no other noises. There were no neighbours or roads anywhere close. It was practically a place of refuge for the family. In December 1990, the family was preparing to spend Christmas at the cabin. Along with them, many other members of the family would spend Christmas Day there. But on December 22nd, the 4 members of the family and Kaye's mother, Beth Potts, were preparing the place for the special day. At some point, they realized that they did not have all the things they needed and decided to go to the city to shop. The cabin was located in a place so far from the main roads that to access it in the winter, the family needed to use snowmobiles, small motorized snow cars. The route was approximately 3 kilometers between the cabin and where the owners of the residences in the area used to leave their cars parked. Once they'd finished shopping in the city, they returned. In the first snowmobile were Linae, the eldest daughter, her mother Kaye, and her grandmother Beth. As soon as they arrived at the cabin, Linae warned them that she was going to enter the house quickly because her hands were freezing. She would warm her hands and come back to help with the bags. As soon as she entered the cabin and went up the stairs to the entrance, she saw a figure pass by the kitchen and go behind the refrigerator. Her first thought was that her cousin and more of the family had already arrived and that he was perhaps hiding to scare her when she came down the stairs. But it didn't turn out that way. From behind the refrigerator came a man in a grey shirt pointing a gun at her. A few seconds later, her mother barely got in the cabin, and immediately from behind a bed in one of the bedrooms, the second man, wearing glasses, came out and immediately pointed a gun at Kaye.
What is it? Why are you here? I'll give you anything.
But the man's response was, and she fell to the floor. Seeing her mother fall on the floor, Linae realized that her grandmother had already entered and had seen everything, and then Kaye's mother, Beth, didn't even have a chance to scream. Silence took over the environment. Linae remembered that her father and sister were on their way to the cabin. She also remembered that there was a car in the house that wasn't used much, and that the car key was in the house itself. Even with snow everywhere, she started to think that she could get them out of the house and thus save the life of the father and sister who were arriving. However, the noise of the second snowmobile was approaching, and then she realized it was too late. The man in the grey shirt took the back of Linae's neck with one hand and with the other pressed the gun to her back. As soon as Linae's sister and father arrived and parked the snowmobiles, the man with the glasses, who at the time was wearing a mask, jumped in front of them and ordered them to enter immediately.
Don't move. Don't do anything. Come in. Now.
Inside, the men asked Rolf for money, and he immediately started to take everything out of his pockets and throw it on the floor. The sum of all the money that Rolf had there was $105. Rolf begged them to take what they wanted, but not to hurt his family. The man holding Linae ordered the masked man to shoot Rolf.
Shoot him!
The second man prepared the gun to fire, but failed to pull the trigger. In a hurry, the boy in the grey shirt did not ask again, and he took the gun from Linae's back, pointed it at Rolf, and shot him. The gun didn't work. He rearmed the gun and pressed again. Again, the gun didn't work, and he tried one more time. This time, he hit Rolf in the face. The girls had no idea why this was happening, and now deep silence again took over the cabin. After the last shot, they were sure their parents and grandmother were dead. Walking around the house with the criminals, the sisters realized that they had been there for some time before all this happened, because they saw food and cans of soda scattered around, several Christmas presents opened, a very big mess, and Even the camera that the family had was out of place, which made them think the killers had also watched their family tapes. In the garage of the house, there were several gallons of gasoline that they had used to supply the snowmobiles. The criminals kept the girls busy and ordered them to spill gasoline around the cabin as they were going to set it on fire. Their plan was to burn the whole house and destroy all the evidence, and then ask the girls to start loading the snowmobile with the things they wanted to take. Even though the girls were completely terrified, they obeyed. The men lit the fire and then sent the girls to drive the snowmobiles, each with one perpetrator behind them in the vehicle, and they headed to the road where the family car was parked. When they arrived at the entrance to the village a few seconds after leaving the cabin, they saw their Uncle Randy, who was with a group driving other snowmobiles. Randy waved at them and was ignored. Randy thought they didn't see him, but he also realized that they had 2 boys with them, which made him think that maybe they were with their boyfriends, but even so, he had a thought that it was all a little weird. The man behind Linae asked her who he was, and she replied that she didn't know him, that maybe he was someone being friendly. Upon arriving in the car, they started to put things in it, and the men continued to threaten the girls. One of them opened his coat and showed Linae a knife and said,
"Don't worry. I'm just as good with a knife as I am with a gun."
After loading the car, the men sat in the front with the girls behind, and on the way back they passed Randy again, and he recognized the car and waved once more. The sisters knew that if they asked for help, the men would kill their uncle, and so they once again did not answer and pretended that they did not know him. It was at this moment that Randy was sure something was wrong. Less than a minute after that, a new snowmobile approached Randy and slowed down. Randy noticed that the man riding it did not wear any accident or cold protection equipment. No gloves, pants, jacket, helmet, nothing. When approaching the motorcycle, Randy realized that the man's face was totally swollen to the point of barely opening his eyes.
Randy, they killed my wife, my mother-in-law. Oh my God.
Rolf survived the gunshots and the fire. He was unrecognizable.
They took my daughters. Call the police.
While Randy helped his brother to get to the car and asked for help, Rolf explained what had happened at the house. After being shot in the face, he fell, but was still conscious. He pretended to be dead and overheard the men talking about setting the cabin on fire. Rolf tried at all times to remain conscious so as not to pass out. He felt them pouring gas on him. The men walked away, and minutes later he heard the snowmobile start up and become more distant. Rolf got up and saw that the house was on fire in places, and he tried to put out the flames. To avoid getting burned as he was bathed in gasoline, he ran to the bathroom to wash himself and gave up putting out the flames. He took a third snowmobile from the garage and left. While Rolf explained all this in the car, Randy was driving as fast as possible and at the same time trying to call the police using a cell phone at a time when the service wasn't as reliable as it would have been today. Finally, the call got through and someone at the police station answered.
"Hello. There are criminals in the area. They kidnapped my nieces. They shot my brother. I need a helicopter."
With a connection problem, Rolf immediately went to the nearest gas station and called 911 again and managed to explain everything this time. In the car of the kidnappers, the girls still in shock, a vehicle passed in the direction opposite them. The 2 criminals started to get nervous. The police tried to stop them, but couldn't. The criminals started shooting at the police car until the police managed to shoot the tire and take the driver's control away, causing the car to get off the track and skid in a small rut. Several policemen were surrounding the car, pointing guns at everyone.
Hands up! Put your hands up! Hands up!
The girls held hands and started to pray. The murderers, seeing that they had no way out of the situation, surrendered themselves. But who were these criminals? Von Taylor, 25, had a stint in the police and was previously arrested for theft. Edward Deli, 21, also previously was arrested on charges of arson. The two were in a recovery house where they met and fled together on December 14th, just 8 days before the crime. After arresting the criminals and taking Rolf to the hospital, the police and investigators returned to the cabin to collect evidence. Principal investigator Joseph Offert said the following in the documentary Live to Tell, 3 days before Christmas.
The number one concern in this particular case is rescuing anybody who might need assistance. Secondly, is to preserve the evidence of the crime scene. One of the most significant pieces of evidence was a video camera. Inside the video camera was a videotape. We had no idea what might be recorded on that. So at a number of junctures in that film, I was saying, oh my God.
Do you remember that Linae noticed that the camera was moved and thought the criminals had watched family moments? Well, they didn't actually watch anything. They actually recorded everything they were doing at the house before the family arrived. One of them filmed while the other opened all the family's Christmas presents, as if it were Christmas Eve, and showed each gift to the camera. They did it with ease. They knew they had the time. In the end, it seemed that everything was planned, from the invasion of the house to the kidnapping. The fire would be part of this, and, imagining that all the evidence would be burned, they did it. For the sisters, their father is a hero, getting shot in the face, pretending to be dead, not being burned, going through the cold without protection to ask for help, showed a strength they cannot describe. Approximately 5 months after these crimes, Von Taylor pleaded guilty to both counts of murder in exchange for the state dropping all other charges against him. Taylor chose to go to court in front of a jury rather than in front of a judge. In the end, the jury sentenced him to a death sentence for each murder. That is, he got 2 death sentences. 2 weeks later, it was Edward's trial. He chose to go to trial with a judge. His lawyer argued that it was Taylor who made all the shots. The verdict, 2nd-degree murder, which meant that the death penalty was no longer an option. In 2001, Linae received a letter of apology from Edward Deli. She thought about answering, but hesitated. Just 9 years later, she decided to answer this letter. In the same documentary we mentioned before, Linae speaks.
I held on to the letter, and I reread it probably 20, 30 times. I basically wanted to get a feel if he was truly sorry. I was very careful and guarded with my feelings. Deli shared with me that he has grown into a man, not the same evil boy that committed the crime. I believe that I gained my freedom back for myself by choosing to forgive Deli. For me, forgiving does not mean forgetting. I do not believe Edward Deli has a place outside of prison. But when I came to the place of forgiveness, I felt a tremendous burden fall off my shoulders. I felt free.
Edward remains in prison in Utah. Taylor, despite pleading guilty, may not have expected the death penalty. He has repeatedly appealed his sentence. Despite a few legal victories on Taylor's part, the state remains firm, and it always ends up contesting the appeals and the sentence. Therefore, Taylor remains on death row. The family decided not to demolish or sell the cabin. They decided to just renovate it to keep the place as the memory of the last place in the life of Kaye Tiede and Beth Potts. Today, they still use the place to recover their energy and create new memories together. Linae married a childhood boyfriend after her previous marriage ended in divorce. Linae has 4 children from her first marriage. She is now with Nathan, her current husband, and has 5 more kids with him. Trisha is divorced and has 2 daughters. Rolf died of cancer in 2008, and at the time of his passing, all the surviving family members were at his side.